Hi, and welcome to the micro lecture on brand strategies. We talked a little bit about brand, what it means to the consumer, what it means to the company. Now we're going to talk about strategies that a company can employ around branding. So there's several ways to look at this, but there's an umbrella approach, which many companies use. Basically, it's attaching the same brand name to all the products that the company offers. What that ultimately benefits the company is anything that they introduce after the fact that is associated with the name takes advantage of the value that's created around the brand, the original, the higher level brand. A lot of companies employ this. They figure they spend a lot of time and effort to build up their brand for their name, and they want that to be associated with future product introductions. There's higher initial awareness levels. Certainly when you do that, we build stronger brand associations, and quite often, quite honestly, it creates stronger financial outcomes. So I'm going to use Disney as an example. Disney is incredible about branding across multiple media and multiple products. So when we think about a Disney movie coming out, they license everything in there. They license the characters, they license the music, they license all different types of things. And they leverage that licensing to build up their brand as other products license the Disney brand for it, and they leverage it. Makes a lot of sense. It's worth billions of dollars to Disney. There's a house of brands approach, which is introducing a new brand name for every new product line. Especially if you're cutting into target markets that are quite inconsistent from one another, you need to be able to do that. So I'll use the really obvious examples with automobiles. Let's look at Toyota as an example, but they're not the only ones. Most automotive companies do this. They have their Toyota line, their Toyota brand, which is covers lots of different types of vehicles and to lots of different segments. But there's something associated with it as quality and value with the Toyota name. They also own a brand called Lexus, it's just a different message. Quite honestly, the cars are quite often, many times, are very, very similar. But they position that brand at a very higher level, and they go about doing it in a very, very different way. And because they need to do that, because the segment they're going after, the high-end luxury or near-luxury car market buyer, is expecting something different. And my way of jokingly saying it is, when you go to a Toyota dealership, you probably get one of those little Keurig cups for a cup of coffee, and it goes into a styrofoam cup. If you go to Lexus, they might have an espresso machine somewhere in a really fine china, So that's the difference. That's a very small example, but it gives you an idea. Sometimes we think about brand strategies as brand extensions, where we leverage the brand's good name to get customers to buy something new, kind of like what we're doing in our own marketing plan as we're developing it. We think of these as being line extensions. They increase the depth of new product within a line. But it's really important that you leverage off all the things that are associated with your existing brand. So as you launch this new one, you take advantage of all that. So that's a very important part of what we're working on in our own project. There's product categories extensions. So it's kind of interesting. Arm & Hammer, which we think of them as baking soda or baking powder, I can't remember which, but they have all kinds of products associated with the Arm & Hammer name: toothpaste, deodorant, kitty litter. There's all kinds of stuff. It's because the Arm & Hammer name means something, and they're trying to leverage that in other product categories. Okay. A lot of times companies do co-branding. There's lots and lots of examples of that. And when we think about co-branding, we think about, and my best example is, if you think about, I'm trying to think of like lawn equipment or snowblowers and things like that, quite often the brand uses and promotes the brand of a Honda engine being associated with it, because Honda has this reputation for extraordinarily high quality, and they want to take advantage of that. So let's say I have an Airing. I'm the owner of I don't know. I'm thinking of a better example. I'm not sure this is true, but I'm going to say my brand is Toro lawnmowers, and I can say that I have a Honda engine on that lawnmower, I'm probably going to create a higher sense of value for my customer. Okay, so that's what that means. Ingredient branding is, and we've seen this many times, that we're co-branding with a company, it adds value to the host product. That's actually the example I just gave, but that's what ingredient branding is. So they're similar, but not exactly the same. Global brands, you have to think about how their brand is perceived across the world. And I'll go back to my example I was using with the previous discussion on brands. McDonald's creates a global brand. Those golden arches are familiar to lots of people in lots of different countries. Now, it's really interesting. If you go to McDonald's in, China or something like that, you're going to see a menu that looks very different than the one you see in your neighborhood, so to speak, and it's a different approach to the marketplace, but they still take advantage of that brand. The golden arches are a very powerful brand messaging tool, so they use it across the world. I love this discussion about on retail consumer. We think about private label brands and how important they are. There's a phenomena that's going on that private label brands, or brands that are associated with a particular retailer, are really growing in strength. And the reason for that is actually pretty simple. It's because retailers are becoming much, much larger and stronger. Think about Target. Well, Target's a good example, but think about Walmart. They're a better example. Their private brands, which there's many, many of, are sometimes market leaders. In other words, market share. They lead in market share. And that shows how strong they are as a retailer. So their brands mean something. Interestingly enough, Costco's Kirkland brand is a really popular one. But I can go back in time and say that they're really, private label brands were really brought to strength by the former number one retailer in the world by the name of Sears. Sears had very, very strong private label brands that towards the end of the life of Sears, the company, their private label brands were worth way more than their retail operations. So those private label brands from Sears were, for example, they had Die Hard for automotive products. Batteries was normally associated with, but they put it on other ones. But some of the more traditional ones are Kenmore. Kenmore was a well-known and a leading brand in household appliances. And probably their strongest brand was in, of all things, hardware and tools. It was Craftsman. So, again, those were only sold through Sears for a long time, but then Sears realized they were worth so much money, and they started to allow them to be marketed as just normal consumer leading brands. Okay? So private label has really grown a lot in relationship to branded products. Now, branded products are still larger, but private label has really gained a lot in share. And that's not surprising. They're, for example, Walmart, with all its multitude of brands, Great Values being probably the biggest one that they have, is they promote it. They promote it heavily, and they have a lot of incentives to do it. People will say, "I really like Great Values." You name the product, milk. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And if I want to get it again, I have to go to Walmart. So that's a huge incentive for Walmart to build that brand up. So private label has really evolved. It started as kind of this generic approach to things. It's like, we want a cost leader product line out there that I'm not dependent on the brand that I'm doing business as a retailer that I'm doing business with make sure I'm always competitive, I'm going to come up with my own, and I'm going to call it generic. And there was literally a time when you would buy, let's say, a package of flour, for example, and on it was white packaging with black letters that said flour. This is the most basic thing you could possibly imagine. And that was the generic alternative. And people, adopted it and really did okay with it. But the bottom line was it was a choice being offered into the product line by the retailer that evolved ultimately into retailers having their own brands. And like I said, Walmart has, I think last time I looked, was 70 different brands out there that they sell in their stores. That has gone on to more extended brands, where I'm going to use a different retailer. This example is Target is doing some value-added types of branding where they have certain designers who might make products just for them. They're private label brands. And they've really done an amazing job of creating their own brands. And I'll use the Costco example is a good one as well. Kirkland is a very well-known and very highly accepted brand out there. Brand equity is something that we try to determine. I've always loved this stuff because every time I've looked at it, I said, I don't know, But the bottom line is, every brand has some value, some worth attached to it. And there's lots of different ways of considering what the worth of a brand is. So determining the price premium of a brand, how much are you willing to pay for gas at Shell versus the guy across the street who's selling it cheaper? Now, most people wouldn't make that choice, but some people do. Do you buy, the cola brands are well known for spending lots and lots of money and effort to try to create value in their brands. And would you buy Pepsi when it's not on sale as opposed to Coke, or vice versa? Those are things you have to think about. So that's what the value of the brand is how often you're willing to do that. There's lots of different ways to determine this, by the way, and I'm not going to go into all this in a lot of detail, but the bottom line is there is a value to your brand, and you can determine what that is. And the most blatant way, or I should say the most clear way of doing it, is to look at companies like Disney, who generate billions of dollars in licensing revenue, which means that they say, yeah, you can use my name on your product, but you have to pay me a royalty for it. And they make billions of dollars on that. And I'm not kidding. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. So I'll just summarize it by, here's some of the top brands we see. And if you think about each one of these brands, you actually think about what it means to you. It means something. Whether you own the product or not, these things mean something to you. And that's a powerful brand message that it influences the way you're thinking, even though you might not be an owner of the brand or even considering to be an owner of the brand. So that's some of the brand strategies that are out there. This is a very complex topic. It's not as simple as I just made it, but it gives you a taste of what's involved. And it's really quite amazing the power of what a brand is with your product. And you're going to use that with our class project. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions about this, certainly let me know. And I'd be happy to discuss it with you. Okay?